This story is called Cinnabar. Cinnabar has been a ghost town for so many years that even the ghosts had long since moved out. It appeared on no present-day maps, and no marker, even a ruined one, announced the town boundary. Had you wished to visit, though nobody did, you could have reached it by taking Route 28 to its end at Silver Forks. The road continued as Mallow Township, Road 11, and when even that ended, a rough track travelled through the desert until it reached Cinnabar in the foothills of the mountains. Ted and Jody Hodges were high school teachers. Childless by choice, they spent their summers, vacations, exploring North America in their camper pickup truck. Thus, on a hot July day when the sun blazed pitilessly northward from a cobalt sky, the Hodges' camper truck travelled westwards from Silver Forks along the gravelled Mallow Township Road 11 on the track through the desert. Cinnabar was not their intended destination, it was merely where the westward road happened to lead. As the sun began its descent towards the western horizon, Jody caught sight of something in the far distance that caught her attention. "Look, look, Ted," she warbled. "What's that up ahead on the horizon? It looks as if it might be some old mine working. What a lucky thing we came this way. We should go and look." Ted had no need of reply. After all, there was only the one single-track route, and it was clearly taking them precisely in the direction that had captured Jody's attention. 10 minutes later, they discerned on the horizon, blurry in the heat, what looked like a collection of buildings. 20 minutes later still, they came to a faded enamelled sign at a gate that hung open loosely. However, the gate had clearly not been closed these many years, and so they continued till Ted brought their pickup to a halt on the main street of what had once been known as Cinnabar. The only sound was a breeze that sighed very gently through the weathered grey wooden buildings. Nothing moved, apart from the occasional tumbleweed rolling across the dusty street. They both got out. Then they walked the silent main street, peering at each building in turn, the signs on the storefronts so faded that they gave no clue about the businesses that might once have occupied them. Behind the main street, a couple of city blocks distant, and had they been in the city, Jody caught sight of the flash of sunlight off water. "Look," she called out to Ted, "there's water here, come and see." Here, within the town precincts, Cinnabar Creek was a significant watercourse. The town's long-departed inhabitants had painstakingly dug it out by hand, using only picks and shovels, to create a lake that even now was several feet deep and bounded by a stone jetty. Although the stream emanating from the mountains boasted only a modest flow, it was as if a much mightier river traced the path through Cinnabar. The water was clear and one could see right to the bottom. Jody reached down and cupped her hands into the water to take a drink. "It's not bad," she called out to Ted. "A bit musty tasting, but it's nice and cool. And look, look, Ted," she trilled. "Look, there are fish in it. It can't be all that bad." And sure enough, there were several large brown carp swimming lazily on the stream bottom. "Hey, Ted, you brought your fishing rod, didn't you? Let's go back to the camper and get it and try our luck with those fish. Maybe we can eat off the land while we're here." It proved surprisingly easy to hook a large specimen. The creek had not been fished in decades, and the fish were completely naive in the matter of hooks and lines. Back at the camper, while Ted cleaned and filleted the carp, she set up their propane stove. Then she set out bread and butter they had brought with them to accompany the fish, which she pan-fried with dried herbs. Eaten with a squeeze of lemon, the fish was delicious. Jody and Ted enjoyed their meal, and then sat contentedly as the sun disappeared over the western mountains and daylight faded. While the sky gradually changed from orange to the deepest indigo, until countless millions of stars twinkled from the inky blackness. As the evening cooled, with some reluctance they sought the warmth of the campus interior. Next morning, Ted and Jody ate breakfast inside the camper and then strolled the mine site. Another couple might have fallen to their deaths down unnoticed mine shafts, or brought precariously balanced metal girders upon their heads as they poked around ancient machinery. But Ted and Jody explored without incident, perhaps due to the ministries of guardian angels. The great wheel that Jody had first noticed formed part of the assembly to operate the elevator that would have taken the miners deep underground. In the dry desert air there was no trace of rust. It was almost as if the elevator could have been started up with the assistance of a suitable motor. Beyond the lift shaft were large piles of spoil, some of which spilled down towards the creek. The remains of a conveyor system had been used to transport the ore and the spoil. The mine entrance itself sloped at a fairly steep angle down from the ground surface. There was evidence that a railway had once connected the mine and the conveyor system to another building several hundred feet away. That building, which they explored next, contained complicated but ruined machinery, including two impressive great furnaces. One of them contained the words Penfold Mining, Roasting Unit B that was stamped onto the metal. "Well, now we know the name of the company that operated here," said Jody. It was late afternoon when they returned to the camper. "How do you fancy fish again for supper?" said Jody. Without a word, Ted took the fishing rod back to the creek. He soon returned with another fine specimen. Jody prepared rice to accompany the fish, and once again they ate a leisurely supper and sat outside nursing a glass of wine, followed by mugs of coffee as the daylight faded and night fell. On the third morning after breakfast, they explored the town itself in more detail. After walking the main street once again and peering without luck through dusty windows and broken shutters, they tried the rear of each building. Most were locked, and they didn't want to cause damage by breaking in. Two unlocked buildings they went inside, but there was nothing to see. They were completely devoid of furnishings or chattels. However, the side door of one of the buildings had fallen away from its hinges. Upon entering, on the ground floor there were two tables, wooden chairs and an overstuffed armchair. Between a table set against the wall and a shelf that had sagged down from its single remaining bracket was a dusty object. Judy picked it up. "Look, I think it's some kind of diary. Look at the binding and the metal clasp. I've seen these in antique shops back home." Ted shone the flashlight. "Take it outside and then we'll look at it, otherwise we might damage it," he opined. They sat on the stoop of the building next door. Despite its age, the book was in reasonable condition. Ted, a history teacher, cautioned that it must be opened very carefully, as the pages might otherwise turn to dust. He took the volume from Jody and carefully undid the metal clasp. The first page was blank, but for the following inscription, written in a confident hand: "To Megan Williams on her 16th birthday from her grandmother, Elsie Farmer." The remaining pages were filled with writing in a different hand, but still with careful and practiced penmanship. It was indeed Megan Williams's personal diary. "Look," said Ted, taking charge in his professional capacity. "Let's take this book back to the camper where we can sit down on the table and look at it without damaging it." They sat side by side at the camper's built-in table and examined Megan's diary. Megan Williams had emigrated with her family from Wales a century earlier. She described the bawdiness of the town, which her father deplored. It apparently had the peculiar name Cinnabar. The examination of Megan's diary took up much of the day. Megan wrote charmingly about her cat Muffin, who died of some lingering disease. Also, she noticed that people seemed to have been gripped by some kind of madness, which had led to the abandonment of the town. For Presumably she'd left her diary behind in the haste of moving out. "Do you know, something seems to be wrong with Megan as well as the people she's writing about," said Jody. At the beginning of the diary she has beautiful penmanship. In these last entries the writing is bigger, and the letters look kind of shaky. Ted had decreed that they would leave the next day. It was just time to catch a final fish for that night's supper, cooking and eat it before darkness fell. Next morning after breakfast they prepared to leave Cinnabar. "What should we do with the diary?" asked Jody. "Seems pointless to put it back where it was. I think I'd like to keep it as a memento of our time in Cinnabar." History teacher in Ted demurred. "We should take the diary to the local archives," he said. "It could be an important artifact. I saw a sign to the County Museum and Archives when we passed through Silver Porks on the way in. We can go there on our way back." Since it was not often that Ted made his views known so eloquently, Jody felt that she had no choice but to agree. She looked down once again at the black leather cover of the diary with its metal clasp. Upon reflection, she realized that Ted was right. The sort of souvenir once taken home might never be looked at again. The local archives would be able to make much better use of it. Ted Round started up the pickup truck and they traversed the main street of Cinnabar one last time. As they left the town through the ever-open gate, soon the buildings and the mine workings faded from sight, erased from the landscape as though they had never been. Upon arrival at Silver Forks, they went to the County Museum and Archives. There was one other vehicle in the dusty parking lot. Ted led the way inside, with Jody carrying the precious diary in her canvas holdall. "Hello," called Ted, and from a nearby office appeared a woman past middle age. "Good afternoon," she greeted them. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for someone who can tell us about Cinnabar," explained Jody. "We just came from there. It seemed to have been a very big, strange place. We were wondering if there was some kind of history about it. We couldn't find it marked at all on our local map." "Well, you come to the right place, I guess," said the woman. "I'm the county archivist. You're lucky to have caught me. I only work here 2 afternoons each week. My name's Evelyn Davis." She held out her hand. "So how did the town get a name like Cinnabar, and why did it get to be a ghost town?" asked Jody. Evelyn laughed. "There never was such a place as Cinnabar," she said. "Well, that's not really true, I guess. There was and there wasn't. Cinnabar was the name of an old preacher gave it 100 years ago. Pastor Amos, he was called. Apparently a real old firebrand. Anyway," she went on, "Pastor Amos was so outraged that many of the men used to get all liquored up and started calling the tavern Cinnabar. He preached that they'd all get hellfire and damnation with the demon drink the cause. The miners just laughed it off and started calling the tavern Cinnabar, till everyone quite forgot that it was really called Ollie's Tavern. And in the end the place got such a name for rowdy behaviour and drunkenness, the town itself got to be called Cinnabar." "Oh, lordy me, I'm rattling on, aren't I? That weren't what you came in for, I'll warrant." No, replied Jody, "that's just fine. We're just happy to listen and find out more about the town." Evelyn went on, "So what brought you folks to our little museum and archives?" Jody, filled with excitement, almost twittered in reply. "Well, we were just exploring the ghost town. There was one place where the back door was hanging loose, so we went in. With just a few bits of furniture, old chairs and a table. Right above the table, a shelf had come down so that one end was almost down on the edge of the table. That was when I saw it, a book. Must have been high up on the shelf and had slid down. We opened it up real careful. It's amazing. Pages were still in good shape. You could read the writing inside. I've got it here." And she pulled Megan's diary out of her capacious canvas bag. "Look, right here on the inside page. To Megan Williams on her 16th birthday from her grandmother Elsie Farmer." "Did you say Megan Williams?" said Evelyn. "That's an incredible coincidence. Megan Williams is my grandmother. She lived at Cinnabar when she was a girl. Back when I was young, she told me all kinds of stories about the place. Not only that, even before I'd read it, I can tell you you're holding a real piece of history about our Mallow Township. We don't have any other written records from anyone who actually lived in Cinnabar. Most of the miners couldn't read or write. Over the next couple of hours, Jody and Evelyn pieced together much of Megan's story from a combination of entries in the diary and Evelyn's remembered conversations with her grandmother. Megan had been born in Wales, in the mining town Cheharis, to Evan and Bessie Williams. Evan's like his father before him, being a coal miner. He'd worked with the Ocean Coals Company's deep navigation colliery, whose high-quality steam coal was used to fuel the boilers of transatlantic liners. However, the pay for miners was very poor. So when Evan saw an advertisement for experienced miners to do well-paid mining work in North America, passage paid, he and Bessie pulled up stakes in Cheharis. Taking with them the few chattels that they could muster, they crossed the Atlantic in steerage class on one of the very same steamships whose coal Evan had formerly mined deep underground. Then they journeyed several days by rail across North America. They eventually arrived at Silver Forks by passenger train, and then took a mixed train to their final destination. And what my grandmother told me, said Evelyn, things went all right at first. Her father made good money, but the only place you could get supplies, food, fuel, lamps, everything, was the company's store. The company milked the workers for all they were worth. Most of them got badly in debt. Penholds kept back hold of the miners because they could own both the store and the rail spur back to Silver Forks. So no one could leave and look for work elsewhere unless their account with the company was fully paid off. It was far too far to walk across the desert. The miners liked to drink after work, she continued. No surprise there. Most of them were single. Evan, my great-grandfather, was unusual. He brought his wife and daughter with him, and he was also teetotal. He didn't approve of drink at all. He'd been brought up chapel back in Wales. But for most of them, the evenings were a rip-roaring time. Ollie, the tavern keeper, had to pay a hefty slice of the profits back to Penfolds, so it was almost like they owned it themselves. That contributed to how much the men owed the company. After the mine had been going a few years, things started to get really out of hand. It was almost as if the miners were going crazy, like they were drunk all the time. Even my great-grandparents got a touch of the madness, but Grandma swore up and down that it wasn't drink in their case. She never saw a drop of drink in the house, and they were both totally against it. The company tried to bring in new workers, because the ones who were going crazy were so unreliable. The place got the reputation of being cursed. Penfolds tried to keep it quiet, but word got out. No one would sign on to work there. The store manager got the madness too. Half the time there wasn't enough to buy in the store because he hadn't ordered it. The people in the town were going hungry. That February, in the coldest part of the year, men refused to work. They were so mad they burned the manager's house with him in it. That did it. Penfolds closed the mine. He said we shipped everyone out by train. My grandmother's family settled here in Silver Forks. That's an amazing story, said Jody, sobered into near silence. But what caused them to go crazy? And you never did tell me the name of the place before it was called Cinnabar. The last part of the question is easy to answer once you know, and it explains the rest, said Evelyn. The town was originally called Cinnabar. Old Pastor Amos, he'd gone before my great-grandparents arrived, thought it was a clever play on words, you know, Cinnabar and Sinner's Bar. Like I said before, Ollie's tavern, he once declared, is nothing more than the Sinner's Bar. Denizens of Ollie's tavern thought the new name was a fine joke on Pastor Amos rather than a rebuke. Anyway, many of the miners couldn't read. Cinnabar, Sinner's Bar, it all sounded the same. So Sinner's Bar became the town's name. Cinnabar is it's the main ore of mercury. Lots of mining towns around North America are named like that. Galena, Illinois is named for the ore of lead that was once mined there. There's cobalt in Ontario and Uranium City in Saskatchewan. The company mined the Cinnabar and then heated up in those roasting units that you saw. So the mercury sulfide broke down and the mercury metal boiled out. You can imagine how dangerous it must have been to work in the distillation plant. No thought of worker safety back in those days. Henlin continued, you probably know that mercury is very poisonous. It's a cumulative poison. It builds up in your body if you're exposed every day, even though what you get on one particular day won't hurt you. Back then, nobody knew how toxic mercury can be. Every day the miners went to work, they were exposed a bit more to what were poisoned. Mercury affects the brain, which explains why the miners seem to go crazy. The constant drinking made the problem worse. That's why Megan's writing got shaky at the end of the diary. She must have had a touch of mercury poisoning as well. But that doesn't explain why she and her mother and the rest of the people who didn't work in the mine got affected, said Jody. What about poor little Muffin, Megan's cat? Well, part of it might have been that the miners brought home the dust from the mine on their clothes, said Evelyn. That probably wasn't the main thing. The water in Cinnabar Creek was also polluted, and so were the fish in the creek. So when people made tea or caught fish for food to try and cut down on their bills at Penfold's store, they got more of the poison. Poor little Muffin would have mostly eaten fish scraps. Eventually the mercury built up so much that it killed her. The real irony is that people should have known about the water. The township was called Malo for a reason. It's French for bad water. French explorers first came to this part of the West, and they noted that their horses would hardly drink the water in the creeks, even when they were very thirsty. Jody was quiet and thoughtful. Then she admitted, Ted and I drank the water out of Cinnabar Creek all the time we were up there. We even caught fish and had them for dinner. Do you think we'll go crazy? Evelyn smiled reassuringly. No, my dear, you don't need to worry. You were only up at Cinnabar for a few days. It took months and months for the miners up there to get poisoned. So I can't imagine that you two were there long enough to pick up enough mercury to hurt you.